Today we're chatting about just like why it's so important to like attend to like our body's needs on a regular and consistent basis and like how that affects our physical health, but
Uh,
also how it affects our emotional health, right? Because if we think about, hunger is a dictionary word now because it
I
is
love that.
such a commonly used word. And if someone says like, "Oh, I'm feeling hangry," we immediately know it's you're angry because you're hungry. And you might still be annoyed with this thing after we get some food, but like it's amped up because we're hungry,
Do you
right?
think that made the dictionary because of the Snickers commercial?
Oh man, maybe. I feel like it could have been.
Like gave like the perfect visual. That's
Maybe.
exactly how I feel.
Yes. But that's just it, right? Like, so if you go back to high school biology and we talk about the term like homeostasis, right? Homeostasis is when everything in our body, all of the needs are met, everything is good, nothing is too much, nothing is not enough, everything has everything it needs to be happy as a clam.
Uh-huh.
And when that's ideal, right? We want to be as much there as we can. But when something is off with our bodies, when we get out of homeostasis, like we're hungry, we actually become more vulnerable to stress. We become
Mhm.
more vulnerable to negative emotion. That's anger. And if you on average have a tolerance of this for stress, it takes this much for you to really lose your cool. If we're hungry, if we didn't sleep very good the night before, if we've got a headache, if we are super dehydrated, which so many people are now, so many
Uh-huh.
of the women I work with like don't even realize that they're thirsty until they have like cotton mouth because we're so used to not paying attention to our body's cues. But
Uh-huh.
all of that stuff it eats, and then all of a sudden now it only takes this much, and
Mhm.
we are losing it. And
Mhm.
so it's really important that like attending to our body a little bit more consistently can help us to keep that tolerance, not always exactly here. There might be a little bit of a fluctuation, but we really want to try to keep it in that range as much as possible. So that way we really are supporting not only our body's health, but also our emotional health. Because, and I know you've got a lot to share and I'm excited, but I want to add just one other thing. When we wait until like we are starved to then get food because we're at that hanger point, we're focusing then on like what's going to be quick and what's easy. And then we might end up eating foods that are going to like not make us feel good, right?
Yeah.
I'm much more prone to go get that fast food cheeseburger because now I don't have time to like make lunch and wait for something to heat up. I'm just going to run over and grab this cheeseburger and fries. But I also know that for my body, when that hits my stomach and then all that grease is sitting there, I know that that afternoon I'm going to feel like crummy and miserable.
Mhm.
So my stress tolerance might not be this because I'm hangry. It might be this because I feel bloated or my stomach might feel kind of heavy or maybe a little bit queasy, depending on what I ate.
Or
So,
guilty too. Sometimes that guilt sneaks in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it's also just kind of thinking about like, not only do we need to be eating consistently, but also being mindful of like how the foods we eat impact our stress tolerance and then therefore like the emotions that we're going to feel and the intensity that we're going to feel those things.
That's a super good point. And I think I get a lot of people who come in telling me they think they binge eat or they're emotional eaters. And that's valid, right? Most of us do have some emotional eating. I mean, look at Bridget Jones' Diary. It's just all over, right? That's a normal part. Food is a comfort, and it's okay if you use some ice cream as a comfort. It's just not a good coping mechanism all of the time. So do we set ourselves up for that by not having some structure in our eating? So
Mhm.
your glucose stores really drop about every 3 to 4 hours. So we need to kind of fuel our body through the day about every 3 to 4 hours. When we're kind of out of tune, when we've lost that attunement with what our body is telling us we need, then we're not feeding our bodies. We don't even notice hunger until it's kind of gone all the way down to that super hungry point. So when we've lost that kind of clockwork, we almost need to tell ourselves, I need to be eating about every 3 to 4 hours. So then what do you eat? So we know that having some protein and carbohydrate and fat in your diet helps to give you nourishment. So if I just had a carbohydrate, if I just have an apple, it's going to give me quick fuel, which is great. But if I pair that carbohydrate with a protein, it's going to give me more lasting fuel. So why is that important? And it's not important because some lady told me I should do that. But if we start noticing how I feel, so when you're talking about how the fast food made you feel, that's what I want clients to kind of pull with them. When I have carbohydrates with a friend, and carbohydrates should always have a friend because they help sustain that energy. They prevent the big spikes and the big drops, and they help sustain the energy. How do I feel after? Does my energy feel better? Does it have more sustained energy? So it's a great experiment to try at home and see for yourself. When I'm eating more on a schedule, does that impact the amount of food I have? So when clients feel like I'm a binge eater, what did you do during the day? Were you fueling your body during the active parts of your day, or did you skip breakfast and then you snacked and grazed, not having lots of protein or things that were nourishing yourself? And then when you got home and you had that time to kind of rest and digest, your body was already over hungry and you're really having all the nutrients your body was needing all at one time.
Yes.
That's super common scenario.
Yes. That human drive to overcorrect. And we do that with so many things in so many different contexts. But like,
Uh-huh.
yes, by the time we realize that, hey, I need this thing is going on, sometimes we can very much just overcorrect and then we bounce all the way back over here. And yeah, and it sounds like kind of recognizing that like when we're not attending to our body's needs on a consistent basis, we are more vulnerable to that overcorrection at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
And I think once we do that, I think we don't give ourselves grace and we kind of put that harshness on ourselves like, I'm a binge eater. I eat terrible. I just did this. And then you kind of have that, oh, what the hell? I'm just going to always do this. This is always how I eat. And you feel draggy. You may not sleep well because you just had all of this stuff, whether they were good choices or things that don't agree with you, then you don't sleep as well. And then what do you do in the morning? You're in survival mode and you grab quick energy things. Is that caffeine to keep you awake or quick energy foods that are not like kind of paired carbohydrates? So it just becomes a cycle of not feeling great. So
Yeah.
the first thing I usually do with clients is kind of get on a schedule of eating and pair those carbohydrates with protein.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like it would be so helpful to just be able to kind of like, I mean, it's really bringing some mindfulness to it, right? Some awareness of not just what's going on, but like how is this affecting my body? How is it affecting my mental health? Really empowering clients to like take the reins on that rather than just kind of like letting life control what that looks like. Um, because there's always going to be five more things on the to-do list that need to get done before you take your lunch break.
Right.
There just is.
Oh,
There
yeah.
will always be.
Right.
And so really being able to build in some of those routines so that there can be a little bit more of that consistency. Because I'm also thinking too about how at the end of the day, when we can be kinder to our body, a little bit more consistent with food and also with the water piece too, right? When we're able to be a little bit more consistent with just giving our body what it needs across the board, our emotional vulnerability is not as much at risk to those negative emotions. And we have
Mhm.
more energy to then participate in things that are going to create positive feelings. So, not just are we less vulnerable to the negative emotion, but we have more internal resources to create positive experiences and emotions for ourselves too. Right.
Mhm.
Though, like, going for a walk with your family at dusk after dinner,
Mhm.
like we have more energy to do that
Mhm.
if we've attended to our body in the way that it
Mhm.
needs to, right? Like, so doing some of those things, um, being able to like, work on a puzzle after work because you need a break from screen time and you just need some quiet and it feels good to put all the pieces together and complete something. And
Yeah.
that feeling of accomplishment of finishing the puzzle, right? Like, but if we haven't been taking care of our body, like we don't have the mental energy to be
Mhm.
able to do that, the patience to find the pieces and to line them up and to do all the things. And so it's really thinking about, taking care of our body on a consistent basis is going to help reduce that vulnerability to negative emotion and give us the energy and the power to create more positive emotions.
No, I think you're spot on. I
It's a
love how
win-win.
it ties together, right? I just love it.
Yeah, it's a win-win. There's so many, and there's lots of different ways that we can do that, right? And it sounds like you've got some cool tools in terms of helping people to be able to do that a little bit more consistently and problem solve ways to be able
Mhm.
to like, how do you remember to do that every 3 or 4 hours when we maybe are not as in tune with our body's
Right.
subtle cues until we're at hanger?
Until you, yeah. How do you start noticing your body's cues? Yeah.
Right, right, right. And, certainly there's other things that, I help clients with in terms of like other strategies we can use to maintain and manage that, like, emotional vulnerability and increasing the positive feelings too. So lots of tools out there. I think this was a good kind of like overview on why it's so important for our mind and our body to just be participating in this a little bit more consistently.
I think so too. Thank you for doing this. I think this is a great tool for everybody.